Follow along, Catholic Pilgrims, as we follow French doctor of the Church, St. Francis de Sales, through his book, Introduction to the Devout Life. Tune in as we read through this practical guide for living out the Catholic faith well. Welcome, Catholic Pilgrims. Today we are going to read about an issue that we hear about all over the place, and that's anxiety. Even though we are the most counseled, self-help, medicated group in all of history, rates of anxiety are not going down. They are increasing at alarming rates. My daughter's generation, Gen Z, is the most depressed and anxious generation that has ever been recorded. Could it have something to do with all the screen time? Yes, I believe so. Could it have something to do with a lack of faith in God? Yes, I believe so. Could it have something to do with a hyper-focus on the self? Yes, I believe so. But I think there is also another important factor to add to this that combines all three of the ones I've already mentioned. We'll discuss what that is after our reading. So let's open our books to chapter 11 of the fourth part. Chapter 11, Anxiety. Anxiety or disquietude is not merely a temptation itself, but it is a source from which and by which several other temptations arise. Sadness is that mental pain which is caused by the involuntary evils which affect us, whether they be external, such as poverty, sickness, and contempt, or whether they be inward, such as ignorance, dryness, aversion, and temptation. Thus, when the soul is conscious of such evil, she is dissatisfied because of it, and this produces sadness. Forthwith, she desires to be free from it and seeks the means thereto. And so far she is right, for it is natural in us all to desire that which is good and avoid that which we hold to be evil. If the soul seeks means of deliverance for the love of God, she will seek them with patience, gentleness, humility, and calmness, rather awaiting such deliverance from the goodness and providence of God than from her own exertions, industry, or diligence. But if it is through self-love that she seeks deliverance, she will be eager and restless in the search of means thereto, as though it depended more on herself than on God. I do not say that she considers this to be so, but that she acts as though it were. Consequently, if she does not speedily find what she desires, she becomes impatient and greatly disturbed. This, instead of diminishing the original evil, makes it worse, and the soul is distressed and grieved beyond measure, her courage and strength failing, so that she believes her trouble to be irremediable. Thus you see how an uneasiness, which in the beginning is justifiable, engenders disquietude, which in its turn brings on an increase of anxiety, which is highly dangerous. Anxiety is the soul's greatest enemy, sin only excepted. Just as internal disturbance and seditions run a commonwealth and make it unfit for resisting external aggression, so when the heart is anxious and disquieted within itself, it loses the power to preserve those virtues which has already acquired, and also the means of resisting the temptations of Satan, who does not fail, as the saying is, to fish in such troubled water. Anxiety proceeds from an ill-regulated desire to be delivered from the evil we experience or to acquire the good in which we aspire. Nevertheless, nothing aggravates evil and hinders good so much as anxiety and worry. When birds are taken in a snare or net, they cannot escape because they flutter and make all kinds of disorderly exertions to get free, by means of which they do but entangle themselves the more. Therefore, if you earnestly desire to be delivered from some evil or to attain to some good, above all things, calm and tranquilize your mind, compose your judgment and will, then quietly and gently pursue your aim, adopting suitable means with some method. When I say pursue them quietly, I do not mean negligently, but without hurry, care, or disquietude. Otherwise, instead of obtaining your end, you will spoil all and be but the more embarrassed. My soul is continually in my hands, and I have not forgotten thy law, was the exclamation of David. frequently during the day if you can, but at least night and morning, examine yourself whether your soul is in your hand, or if it has not been snatched thence by some passion or anxiety. Examine whether your heart is under your control, or if it has not escaped thence in pursuit of some ill-regulated emotion of love, hate, envy, lust, fear, vexation, or joy. And if it has strayed, before all things seek it, softly lead it back into the presence of God, steadying your affections and desires under His guidance and in obedience to His holy will. Just as those who fear to lose some precious treasure hold it carefully in their hand, so, imitating King David, we should always say, "My God, my soul is troubled, but it is always in my hand. Therefore do I not forget thy law." However small and insignificant your desires may be, do not allow them to disquiet you, for if you do, they will be followed by greater and more important desires, which will find your heart more disposed to anxiety and disorder. When you feel disposed to worry, commend yourself to God and resolve in no way to gratify your desire until your anxiety is entirely allayed, unless it concerns something which cannot be deferred, in which case you must gently and quietly restrain the course of your desire, softening and moderating it as much as possible, and above all, acting not in accordance with your inclination, but with reason. If you can disclose your anxiety to the guide of your soul, or at least to some pious and trustworthy friend, doubt not that you will be speedily relieved. For sympathy in the sufferings of the heart has the same effect upon the soul as bleeding upon the body of one laboring under grievous fever. It is the most effectual remedy. Thus St. Louis counseled his son, "If thy heart be ill at ease, hasten to open it to thy confessor, or to some pious person, and by means of his comfort thou wilt be enabled easily to bear thine affliction." Right before my family left Montgomery, Alabama to go to our new duty station in California, my husband's military class had a graduation party at his boss's house. And I had heard that there was a possibility that one of his partners on their project for the Air War College was going to be stationed in Las Vegas. My family has been stationed in Las Vegas, so I went up to his wife and I said, "So, I hear you all might be getting stationed in Las Vegas. We used to live there." And with a look of mild terror on her face and in all seriousness, she said, "Is the murder bad there?" And this cut me off guard a bit, and I said, I don't know the exact numbers. It's like any big city." She then went on to talk about how murder is happening everywhere, and she's fearful of moving there because of all the murder. It was just murder this and murder that. And I was utterly confused. I mean, yes, it is good to be aware, but she was so anxious about murder that it was troubling. She clearly had some heightened anxiety about it. Then her husband came over and he had heard us talking, and he said, "She's freaked out about murder rates because she watches these real crime shows, and now she thinks that there are murderers lurking everywhere." And then I got it. She reminded me of when I was working for the domestic and sexual violence program back in Florida. All day long, I would help victims, listen to their stories, and deal with violent crimes. I was immersed in it, and because of that, I started to think that abusers were everywhere. Like, I'd go to the store, and every man I'd look at, I just would see a potential abuser. And you get very jaded when you work with evil subjects all the time. Anyway, I talked to my husband about this wife after we left the party and about the conversation I'd had with her about murder, and he said, "Oh, yeah, a bunch of the guys in my class were talking about how their wives were all watching these real crime murder shows, and how now they will hardly leave the house because they're so freaked out that there are probably dead bodies just lying everywhere. And they are binge watching them, and their anxiety levels are just going through the roof." I said, "Oh, well, this explains why they never want to have a girls' night out downtown or really do anything." I was like, "They are afraid." And he replied, "Yeah, that's probably a big reason why." St. Francis says, quote, Anxiety proceeds from an ill-regulated desire to be delivered from the evil we experience or to acquire the good to which we aspire. Nevertheless, nothing aggravates evil and hinders good so much as anxiety and worry." Unquote. Our phones and screens give us constant access to all the bad that is happening all over the world. And as they say, if it bleeds, it leads. So most of our news is about bad things happening: natural disasters, wars, killings, shootings, homelessness, famine, sickness. We don't turn off the news anymore at 9 p.m. and then just go to bed, take a break from it all. No, it is constantly in our face. And so to add to this, we are constantly hearing about all the bad, but more and more people lack faith. And so they have nothing positive to lean into when they hear bad things. They don't have support from a religious community or anything like that. And then to add to this, the culture's message on how to deal with all this bad stuff is to just focus on the self. This is why Gen Z is so anxious. They think the world is a hellscape because of constant bad news and what they're being taught in college. And that makes them like the ladies that are just feeding their minds with these real life crime stories all the time. You immerse yourself enough in the bad, you come to think everything is bad. And they want to be delivered from this evil, but there's just so much that they feel helpless to fix any of it. And they have no God, and then they are encouraged to just focus inward instead of giving them themselves. Can you see why they are so anxious? So, what we must do is threefold. Of course, all the things that St. Francis talks about, but also we need to step away from the news and social media every now and then. Just take a fast from it. Do something else. There's more to life than those things. We need to focus on our faith. We need to get out in nature, and we need to enjoy our families and friends to be reminded of the good. And we need to give up ourselves to our local communities because that's where we can affect the most change and really help out. Doing all these things will help anxiety to lessen. We can't make anxiety go away completely. It's part of the human condition, but we can learn to lessen it. So that is all for today, Catholic Pilgrims. Next time we will talk about sadness, which St. Francis kind of alluded to at the beginning of our reading today. But until then, live the faith boldly and travel well.